It is really with a great pleasure today that we have had the Chancellor of the CSU, Tim White, visit with us. He made a promise to visit every campus during the first year. That year coincides with a calendar year. Therefore, I think he's going to make his goal. I think he told me we're 17 campus he has visited. Tomorrow, he visits our sister institution, the Maritime Academy. He has been meeting with members of the administration, members of the faculty, the students, the editorial board. He has been touring the campus. He has talked to a number of students individually. And I think all of them have found that he is a very smart, interesting man. He also has a good history. He is an immigrant to the United States, having been born in Argentina. Came to the United States at a very young age, and mostly here to Northern California, to the East Bay. And he is a product of community college. He went to Diablo Valley Community College and then went on to Fresno, where he got his bachelor's degree. Went to then CSU Hayward, now East Bay, where he got a master's, and then ended in a doctorate at UC Berkeley. Therefore, he is a product of California's public higher education and of the CSU. One of his sons graduated last year, also from the CSU. Therefore, he's one of us. He has been a faculty member, a research scientist, a dean, provost, and president of a number of institutions, Oregon State, University of Idaho, UC Riverside, and on December 31st, he was elected to be our chancellor. And I have to tell you, as I have worked with him from those days, that it has been a pleasure working with him because of his empathy for the mission of the university, his good personal story, and his good sense of humor. And I hope he either talks or sings, but whatever he does, he will do it well. My pleasure to introduce you, Chancellor Tim White.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ruben. Thanks for taking time away from whatever else you would otherwise be doing. Ruben, I'm really impressed with that painting in the back of the room. It's immensely realistic. It's got depth and color. I don't know quite how the oil moves with the blowing of the wind. I'll have to think more deeply about that. And thanks for the kind introduction. As I was listening to what you had to say about my career, it sounds like a guy who couldn't hold a job. But that's what the Cal State prepared me for, was a whole, not to rephrase that. To be a global citizen and solve problems and create problems, I guess, perhaps. It is a delight to be on campus. Last time I was here, there was some guy with a musical instrument sitting right about here.
Kyle, sorry.
And you could hear a pin drop in this magnificent facility, as well as obviously the amazing talent that you bring here. And I think the thing I like the best about it is the fact that it's integrated with the students and the faculty and the community here. It's just not performance, but it's learning. And So whether you have a named artist or a non-named artist. I won't sing for you, although I just did sing with the student leaders. They wanted me to do the Seawolf yell. Just go stop. There's a camera back there, and but I wanted to start by saying thank you. I did join the CSU, as Ruben said recently, but I've obviously followed public higher education for me personally in different states and different size institutions, but never lost track of what was happening in California, even if I was in Michigan or in Oregon or Idaho. And none of us were spared in the latter half of the last decade, in the beginning of this decade. But perhaps none have been hammered as strongly as California State University writ large, and Sonoma State is a member of that organization, is one of the bright stars of that organization, and it too has been hit hard. And so in my conversations today with folks here, they point out that they don't have as many colleagues as they had in the past, and that's true, and that everybody's individual efforts have to step up, even though there doesn't seem to be enough time in the day or days in the week or weeks in the month or months in the year to get the tasks done at this magnificent university. And so to the faculty and staff that are here, if I didn't know the true story of California's economy and its impact on us, I would say, you're kidding me, because it's not evident when you get here. You talk to students, and while they wish there was more classes of this and more opportunity for that, they feel like they've been taken care of by the faculty and staff here. And I think that's a tremendous credit to each of you and all of you, for despite the extremely tough economic circumstance and therefore the impact on the workplace and things I just described, and that you know in much greater detail than I. You've had such a passion for and a commitment to your students and to California's future and this community's future that I think you should be commended and applauded for that effort. I think we're changing, the economy's certainly changing, and our times will be better for a while rather than poorer for a while. But let me just let you know that my observation of you is one that you should feel very proud of, which does not minimize or diminish the challenges that I heard about today and that I hear about on other campuses. It redoubles my resolve to help try and create solutions to make the CSU vibrant and meet the needs of all the students who are here, let alone the students who are qualified to be here and can't get in. It really is a matter of resources, and that's one of the things I think that I view my job is to make the case as well as possible in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., if they ever open again, to help make sure that we continue this enterprise, because it's not about us. We are the vestibule, if you will, the cauldron that helps our students come here, learn with us and teach us along the way, and then move on to whatever's next and raise quality of life not only for themselves but their communities and for this state. I do want to review a little bit about the macroeconomics of us, just to make certain that we all pause and reflect where we are. So during this latest recession, this system lost $1 billion, with a B, dollars. So that's a lot of money that got pulled out, and as our students that are here know very well, and their families, tuition more than doubled during that same time. But it didn't compensate for the $1 billion down and tuition increases and some other refinancing debt and a few things like that, brought back $550 million. So we went down $1 billion and then went back up $550 on the backs of our students and their families. That means we're still $450 million from where we were in 2008, down. It's a lot of money. We have about 6% fewer employees than we had at the beginning of the recession. And we have something like 3 or 4% more students than at the beginning of the recession. And the graduation rates on this campus and across the system went up during that very difficult 5-year slide economically. So for those who like to, the pundits, if you will, who say that CSU didn't do its fair share, there is an inconvenient truth of the facts. There are fewer of you that work here. There are more of you that study here. And the success as measured by getting students to degree has gone up. So that's why it feels tougher today, is because it is. And so the appropriation that we received this year for the first time in many years of $125 million is extremely welcomed, and we're grateful for that. But it means we've moved from minus $450 million to minus $325 million. And I will work day and night and ask for your help to make sure that the next cycle we continue to move our resources back up. I think tuition and fees will be relatively flat for a while. That's not a commitment, because that's what we have to use in order to continue our programs if the state has another hiccup, et cetera, either driven by the economy or driven by the politics of public decision-making, public policy. And finally, and then we'll just open it up to questions and talk about whatever you'd like, is another great impression that I had from my readings prior to coming here and then during my course of conversations today is the amazing way in which you're engaging with the community. Obviously, the needs of this part of the state in education issues and public policy issues, transportation issues, entertainment, hospitality, certainly the wine industry, and the list goes on in schools, non-English speaking, people of a poor, low economic background. The fact that your students and your curriculum is engaging with the needs of this region of the state creates a more enriched learning environment for students, but also means that we're bringing value by their internships and their volunteer work in ways that help us when we go to Sacramento and say, why does the CSU matter? Well, it's because at Sonoma State, the students went downtown and did the following thing and created the following opportunities for those who didn't have the means to do it on their own. And so I would just continue to encourage your students and each of you as employees to remain engaged with the community. And from time to time, I'm going to ask you to be advocates for the CSU. Not that it's about us, but it's because we're here that we can create these opportunities and hope for a different future. And we will come across tough times again and so forth. And part of this for me is that even in tough times, communities stay together and sit down and work out the difficult things and say, you know, we're actually all on the same side. We're trying to create these opportunities through education and research and creative activity. But there's a difference of opinion how best to go about things. Work it out and realize that we're all trying to push in the same direction. So, at any rate, it's a joy to be here, and I look forward to, I wish I actually wasn't up here, but I don't know where I could go down there. Maybe I'm actually going to walk down there. And you have some microphones so how does this work? And I'm sorry about the folks with the cameras. I'll try and stay standing.
I'm so sorry.
Can I just walk through here? And great. So anything you'd like to talk about, I'm happy to.
If you have a question, raise your hand, and one of these two people will come to you.
Steve Wilson, the math department. There's all kinds of things that I could talk about, but I think the single most important one would be having enough sections so students can get their classes. Students who leave disgruntled because they can't get their classes are not likely to become lifelong donors. So it's bad economics. That's not a good idea.
I'm on your side, Steve. you know, not only is it bad news for them, but they're taking place where the student can't get in. So it's a double-edged negative sword. And that's a matter of resources. It's a matter of us having the sophistication to manage when the curriculum is delivered. You know, and I don't know about you all, but I've got a card for my bank, and I can go down to Wells Fargo and stick that sucker in there, and it tells me how much I owe on my car payment, and how much I owe on a house payment, and how much money I have in my checking account instantly. And I've often thought that we need to put in these analytical software around course management that says, you know, I've got 273 biology majors at the junior level. We're going to need, you know, Bio 403 in the fall, and that the chair and the faculty know that one-time bolus is coming, and so there's enough sections next fall, so all those students can get through. So the predictive analytics help students get through the system, but it also helps us manage the way in which we provide the courses. And so I don't know to what extent it's working across the system. A lot of this stuff is brand new, and it's hard to figure out how to make it work well, but I accept your point, and we all need to work together on that one. Yes. I've got to do a bounce around.
Right here.
Good afternoon, Chancellor White. I would like to first thank you for visiting our campus today. Given SSU's history of racial tension and discrimination, students of diverse backgrounds do not feel culturally accepted on this campus. Although there has been brief efforts to dilute the impact of racism and intolerance on this campus, there has not been a decline in acts of discrimination and hostility. What are some new ways SSU can eliminate discrimination on the campus? If campus employees are not effectively solving these issues, what other steps should students be taking?
Well, that is perhaps going to be the most important question of the day. Let's think about, first of all, thanks for asking. It gives us a chance to talk about something that's pretty dear to my heart. We have an amazing, and then I can fill in a variety of words to follow the word amazing. Part of it is opportunity, but part of it is responsibility, and part of it is hope, and part of it is inspiration. To be a part of society that brings people together from all walks, and then you can divide what that means. It can be being African American or from Argentina. It can mean a member of the LGBT community. It can mean that you're 55 when you start your freshman studies. It can mean that you're dirt poor, or that you come from extreme wealth. I mean, the heterogeneity of humanity cuts across all the variables that get talked about in society. So from a learning environment point of view, if we were talking about, and I'm going to make some stuff up, what are you studying? So, perfect, I can make it up and maybe even be close to sociology. So if we're talking about public policy in urban environments, and you have an African, and where's home for you? You have an African-American student from Oakland, and the lens, did you go to, which high school did you go to? Fremont. Okay, so we got this demographic figured out. So here's a bright woman who's studying at Sonoma, who grew up and went to schools in a part of the Bay Area that's had its fair share of economic issues, its fair share of racial strife, its fair share of anarchists, its fair share of crime, its fair share of drugs, its fair share of hope, of beauty, of just about everything in society. But your view about good urban policy is going to differ from somebody who grew up in Roanoke Park, who may have grown up in a situation where there was never a fight at their school, where everybody was above average, and that the average house income level was this number instead of this number. So in that discussion class, in public policy class, what makes good urban policy? those two students are going to bring different lenses to the discussion. Not that either one of them is right, but they both enrich the discussion from different points of view. And if we can't do that on a college campus, where in society will that happen? And we can't come together, if we can't come together on a college campus and at first blush see or feel things that make us feel different, but after that first 10-minute conversation, we find out we have more things in common than we have in difference. So I would call on each of you and all of you to take on crystals, observation, and challenge. And create the fora where we as faculty and as staff and as students and the community can sit down and talk about how we embrace the notion of differences as an asset and a strength to understand the commonalities of humanity. And then embedded in that, in all of our majors, sociology perhaps more so than others, is when they leave here, students leave here, they are prepared to be culturally competent, to go into communities of color, communities of poverty, countries of the same, rural, frontier, urban, and find ways in which communities with all of their differences find the common set of values about raising the quality of life for everybody in there. And in some respects, it's a cultural, not in a racial, ethnic cultural use of the word, but a campus climate, a campus cultural use of the word, about a collective responsibility to not say, oh, we do diversity over there and I'm a physicist, we do physics here, but embed that piece of the need for all of us in our physics classes as well as our sociology classes, and the list goes on. The world is only, and the state is only going to become more heterogeneous on every variable. And if we don't both model and understand and support and encourage and value that diversity, we're not going to be a very healthy society. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, so thank you for listening. I'll come back. There's one up here, and I'll come back.
Chancellor, thank you for coming in and engaging in this dialogue with us. I think it shows a great deal of effort on your part to understand the people at the CSU. I met you briefly at chess, and that was very good. I really enjoyed your presence there. I think you have one of those shirts.
The striptease at chess, which was...
It's great.
It made YouTube, I don't know.
I enjoyed it. I'm currently the student lead for our Community for Entrepreneurial Leadership and Learning here on campus. And I wanted to get your thoughts on how similar entrepreneurial thinking centers in higher education, such as the Lavin Center at SDSU or other centers across the nation, can sort of influence the way that we change our students' perspective on the real world, how we teach our students, and how we sort of prepare them for a career and not just a job.
Yeah, that's a thoughtful question, right? In some respects, the topic is different, but maybe the answer is comparable to what I just did. Crystal is you know, there's something about failure that is powerful, and yet when each of us fail, especially in an academic setting, it's viewed as a negative. Now, if you keep failing on everything you try, it's probably something to work on there as a student or an employee. But what I'm driving at is the willingness of a campus or a community or a person to take risks in a way that failure is a very likely possible outcome, and not have that person sort of ostracized as, you know, the biggest loser. So entrepreneurial ways to break paradigms is to have the courage to try things differently because you're expecting a different outcome. And I don't know who gets credit for that corollary of, you know, keep doing it the same way over and over and expect a different outcome. That's a definition of insanity. almost everybody takes credit for that. I don't. But the corollary that you raised is, how do we start taking risks and sometimes fail, but not be viewed as a failure as an organization or as an individual? But with those ways of changing the way we learn from each other and with each other, that really is the lesson of higher education. And actually I've given a couple of commencement speeches. I've stopped doing it because, you know why, to get up there and say, after you've done all this work, it really isn't the ABCs of what you learned that matters to carry you forward. That's not literally true, but it's approximately true. It's the process of taking on something you didn't know how to do and sticking with it and succeeding and coming across things that managing ambiguity, trying to find creative solutions and things that you had no idea existed. Well, I don't know how many jobs you heard Ruben go through my inability to have a job. Yours is going to be 3 times that many. And there are going to be jobs that we don't even know about. They don't even exist today. And if you leave here knowing the ABCs of your major, you're a good accountant or a good chemist, but don't know how to think in the environment in which you're going to be and solve problems at your workplace and in your family, or in your community around schools or park districts, etc., then you're not in a position to be as giving to society at the level that you're capable of doing. And so at the university level, we have a chance to sort of do that in a controlled environment, including risk-taking and including failing.
Over here on this side. We have a question over here.
I want to echo the thanks that you came to our campus and that you're actually listening to us. I hope it's not just a political show of listening, but actual listening. And also for the sort of debut you made when you took on the chancellorship of really showing your solidarity with all of our pain. And you started off by talking about the impact of the California economy on the CSU, which is exactly right. On this campus, though, it's not only the impact of the California economy. You used that metaphor of us as being in a cauldron, which is very accurate. And the earlier question about our difficulty offering the number of sections our students need to graduate is compounded because of administrative decisions to take on ambitious building projects that now we're financing by accepting more freshmen than we can educate. And this is something that was done without faculty input, and yet it's faculty and future students who are paying the cost and that extra workload and extra anxiety about trying to finance this new debt. And so my question for you is really about decision-making and what your vision of decision-making is. Whether it's a top-down process that comes from on high and is administered to those below, or sort of what degree of dialogue and democratic decision-making you see as part of your leadership.
Yeah, so I can speak for myself, okay? And we should go have a beer because this isn't political theater, this is Tim. And I'm sorry I'm wearing a tie. I'd much prefer to be wearing something much more relaxed. So let me just try different thoughts that at least are related in my mind that touch on the question you just raised. So during the interview process, so first of all you have to realize that I wasn't very happy, very privileged to be your chancellor. But I wasn't looking for a job. Folks came and talked to me about it, and I was pretty both busy and focused on and happy with what I was doing on the Riverside campus. The big project there was the first public medical school in 44 years in the state of California. And I started in 2008 and finished it just before Christmas in the economic, and we got it done. We built the buildings, we got it accredited, We got it funded for the short term, and then subsequently it's now funded permanently. So part of my answer to you is, and you can imagine the number of conversations in the English department and the science group on the Riverside campus when I needed to start directing resources towards a medical school during an economic downturn. Is, gosh, Tim, if you didn't do that, we could have more sections of this, and we'd have more faculty in that, and we'd be, let's wait for a better economy to the medical school. And that's a perspective that I both acknowledge and understand. But my thinking was, so again, this is an inland Southern California issue, but there are communities in that area of the state where there's one primary care doc for 9,000 people. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what's my moral responsibility for the long term while trying to manage the short-term attraction? And I engaged, just my style, a lot of different people in the community and on campus, and not everyone agreed with the decision. But everybody understood the value-based proposition that it was based on. And that as a public UC campus, we had an obligation to get more practicing physicians in inland Southern California for the health of a primarily poor and minority population. That was the higher order calling, despite the fact that we had fewer physics, fewer history, and fewer sociology classes and sections and so forth. So while others may have looked at the data and made a different decision, I did it, and I stood up, and I had many a difficult conversation, difficult in the sense of very strong points of view in the Senate. But at the end of the day, the storm went away, because people said, okay, and maybe the green is similar. I don't know the degree of student center yet. Right. Right, yeah. So my point is, part of my answer is that there are times when you have to make a decision that may be for the best long-term issue for the campus, but it's hard on the short term. And so that's one. The second thing is, in the interview process, I was asked, what did I think of shared governance? So, you know, this is a small group of faculty, senate, and so forth. And then I got asked by, in a larger group, the same question. And it was very interesting, because I leaned forward and I said, you know, I just don't believe in it. You can imagine in that conversation that was just about the game ender right then. Say, what I do believe in shared leadership. Let me tell you, in my values, the difference. Governance sounds to me like going 35 into 25 and being told you're going too fast. It's kind of a regulatory compliance. I'm not advocating to change the name, but that's my first assessment on shared governance. But shared leadership, to me, implies a higher order of responsibility of each of us and all of us. To think about the things that matter the most for the future and for the present. And that we debate them, and it doesn't matter whose your idea or my idea, or your idea that's touched by you, and then touched by somebody else becomes even the better. It doesn't matter where the idea comes from, but that we all have a responsibility to put good ideas in play, to debate them honestly, not endlessly, and then pick the right one, and then execute it if it matters for the short term or long term. That's the way I've always gone about shared governance, shared leadership, is I've got ideas, but I also pretty easy to say, you know, I don't know, or your idea is better than mine, let's use yours. But let's stay focused on the core issues, and for me then the core issues come back to the core mission of the institution. The learning environment, the creative environment, research environment, and engagement with the community. And and how each of us does our part to create that cauldron. And I don't know, couldn't tell in your question whether the cauldron was a negative or a positive for you, but for me it's got that, yeah, the great soup comes out of a hot pot, right? I mean, it's the idea that there's a lot at stake. And I want passion in that conversation. Not disrespect, but I want passion. In that we cook stuff up that's better for the future. So that was my intent in using that. Thank you. Good question. More question.
Over here.
Thank you, Chancellor White. So last month I met you when I received the CSU Trustees Award, and it was really a privilege for me to be Sonoma State, to be the individual who was chosen for that award. And it's one of the most privileged things that I experienced when I met you and when I met every single president of each CSU. And one of the things that I got out from there is when we celebrated diversity and individual struggles, and how it enlightened and motivated every single one of the individuals in that room, including the governor, when individuals like myself who did not have the ability to go to university like this had the opportunity to study in this amazing university. So with that said, how can we in the future encourage and have more individuals like myself? Because that's one of the things that I would never forget in my life. Meeting you, meeting the other presidents, and talking to those amazing individuals that was chosen in each universities. Thank you.
Well, I think it ties in then that when you come to Sonoma State as a student, this is not a 4 or 5 or 6 year period of your life and then you move on. That in many respects, this institution has made a commitment to you to help shape who you are as a person around your values, around your knowledge base, around your skill sets of communication, et cetera, et cetera. In return for that commitment, that you've made a commitment to this place to help as life goes on in ways that you might. So early on, that doesn't mean writing a $10,000 check, because you won't have it. Right? But it does mean going back home to talk to students in your high school. And don't wait for them to invite you, you go volunteer. And then you go and you talk to students like you at that high school and say, I chose Sonoma State. Let me tell you about this incredible experience and how it lifted me and launched me, and how much I enjoyed the time. You ought to think about that. So early on, you help bring other students from communities that that each of our students know. Some would be perhaps, right? Some would be just down the street. But this is a good place to be. Secondly, I would say that as a campus, one of my big puzzles is we have 450,000 students. How do we personalize the learning experience for that many people? And not just become a place you go and you show up and you get this stuff put in you and off you go. But rather we have that personalization so your particular needs academically or socially or financially don't get lost in the milieu. There's a lot of others like you here. So that's really a challenge to those folks that run the campus on a daily basis, is to make sure there's enough brown bags and offices and places where people can go and say, God, I love it here, but I have trouble with X or Y, and where's that support group to get me around? I'm very sensitive to that. People who come, first generation students in particular, or those who come from school districts that may not have been as enriched, or their family was poor, and there was no summer camps, and they come in with all the intellect in the world, but no sets of experiences to succeed. And sometimes it's a hug, sometimes it's a kick in the pants, sometimes it's a word of advice on your chemistry about how carbon and hydrogen bond. I don't know. That personalization piece in a large organization has to exist, I think, for so many of us to succeed. I couldn't have made it without somebody doing all of the things I just said to me, including, chewing me out when I didn't do my piece of it, which was to work hard at goals. So, if you look at campuses, they tend to have I don't know about Sonoma State. But when I was at Oregon State, it was stunning to me. We had something like 400 students from Hawaii. The most amusing day was the first day of school because it was like 60. And all these young men and women from Hawaii were in their shorts, and their goosebumps were bigger than anything else. But the reason families kept sending Hawaiian students to Corvallis was because other Hawaiian students had a good experience there. There was enough of them to have a community and enough support down in the ether where families told families, send your kid to Oregon State. They're going to be challenged, they're going to be supported, they're going to be safe. I know at Riverside, we had some amazing connections in the barrios of Los Angeles, where young men and women, who come out of extreme violent neighborhoods came to Riverside because they wouldn't be shot. They'd be loved and challenged and supported. And they went from pants down to here to pants up to here by the time they left, and they went back to the barrio and told, Manuel, go there, do your piece. And so that word of mouth in communities of color and communities of LGBT students and communities of geography become a big part of how a campus builds a motif. And then the campus's responsibility is to make sure that they continue to embrace those students. So you don't get one of each from every segment of society, but you build pockets. And that's what you can do now. And then when you have a job or become a boss, you create internships. You give back to future Sonoma State students by saying, come spend the summer with me in my Hawaiian office, or my LA office, or my Roanoke Park office. And then you hit it big time, and then they start hitting you for checks later on. And it doesn't feel like you're writing a check. It feels like you're creating hope and opportunity for somebody just like you 40 or 50 years later. People that do philanthropy obviously had some financial success, but they're not giving away their money or feeling like they're getting hit up. They're trying to invest they're in a position in life to invest in each of us who need a helping hand along the way. And that's how society works, is the front end will help you, the back end you help the next front end group.
On this side of the back.
Thank you, Chancellor, for coming out here again to talk to us today. My question for you is, there's been a developing trend on the attack of the ethnic study departments on CSU campuses. Our campus has experienced foreshadowing events such as the decrease in diverse and ethnic class availability, along with a decline in faculty personnel for these departments. For generations, campus employees and students have displayed a lack of diversity acceptance and consciousness. What new steps should the university take in order to sustain and improve the quality of ethnic education and acceptance on this campus?
Yes, wonderful question, thank you. So the first thing that we're doing is trying to understand sort of the origins of all of the departments that come under this broad umbrella for the last 20, 30 years. I'm actually going to bring it to the Board of Trustees. May not be done by November, but it'll certainly be done by January. And then secondly is to understand in programs that enrolled a lot of students and now don't have a lot of students, what are the causing factors of declines in enrollment? Is it a lack of faculty, or is it a lack of interest in that major? I don't know. So I want to do it analytically and bring it in front of the board and bring it to the public and say, this is what we've understood. I've asked Jim Rosser, who just retired as president of Los Angeles campus, to help chair that effort. And Jim has a great deal of understanding and sensitivity to all of the factors that compete. And so I think the campuses who found themselves, and again, I don't know the cause, but who found themselves with low numbers of majors or low numbers of faculty, have had the decision, say, do we just get out of this business? Or do we get rid of some of the administrative structures around it and keep the major alive or the minor alive? And I think that's what a lot of places have ended up doing. So the study still exists, but perhaps the administrative structure of the department now has gotten integrated or merged with other departments. Now, one of the things that we do at universities is we often say, if there's an area of study, it has to have an administrative unit, it has to have a department. But the truth is, it doesn't. You can have a major that doesn't sit in a department with the same name. Departments cost money to administer, with chairs and a whole bunch of staff work that makes a department a department. I remember when I spent time on Berkeley campus, and I realized there's a big difference between life sciences and ethnic studies, so don't misunderstand what I'm about to say. But there was an issue of, and I can't remember today, if it was 13 or 17 departments in the life sciences. So there was anatomy, and there was ecology, and there was physiology, and there was evolutionary biology. And the university, with incredible unrest over this, decided to organize life sciences like life sciences are organized in the world, and go from the 17 or 13 departments down to 2. Well, you would have thought the world ended, right? Because I, as an anatomist, now I'm no longer working in an anatomy department, I'm working in an integrative biology department. But with a short amount of time, people realized that they still were an anatomist, working in a department of a different name. And they still studied anatomy and taught anatomy, but it was in a department of a different name. But having those 2 departments organized, the one was cell molecular biology, so kind of from genome up to cellular systems, and the next one was from an organ level all the way up to ecosystems, right? So it was organized how life is organized into life sciences. It didn't occur without a lot of upset, but now it turned out to be exactly the right thing to do. I don't know what the right outcome is here, other than a commitment to you and to others to study it and to talk about it openly and think about it and make the very best decision for our students and for our faculty and for our communities. And so we'll shine a light out and we'll make any decisions without a lot of discussion. And I think people that manage departments, manage colleges within the university, or manage universities, they've, as we talked earlier, lost a lot of money. And so where can we keep our majors that matter and not spend as much money on administering them? It's really been the driving factor in the last 7 or 8 years while you've been a student here. But there's some things we do that are expensive, that are the right things to do. And that's, I don't know where this is going to come out, but thank you for raising it here and raising it in other places as well.
One final question over here on this side. Any questions over here? Question back there?
Sandra Shand, I'm an Educational Opportunity Program counselor here. I know that in the 18 to 24 age group, students, young people voted at twice what was expected and changed the last election significantly. Do you think there's a role if students felt empowered to show up in numbers at the Capitol in Sacramento when the legislatures are deciding are they going to spend money on more prisons or on education if they aren't swayed by how much the CSU contributes economically to the state, which puzzles me? Would that pressure from young voters, do you think, make a difference if we felt that you as a new chancellor would stand up at the highest levels and fight for more money for the CSU?
Yes. I think the most recent proof of the pudding was Prop 30. But you can go back in our adult lives, before many of our students were born, and think of other pivotal moments where the student voice gathered around issues and made a difference on a campus or in a state. When I go to Sacramento, I'm the hired gun. And they and you would expect me to be the most eloquent speaker on behalf of our students, faculty, and staff, and the needs for society for what we do for a living. But when a student gets up there and maybe not have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, but says the same thing in her words, it's more powerful. When that student, and when we think about how do we help, so the student who comes out of San Francisco goes to the San Francisco representative's office. And we've thought about this, and they're actually neighbors. And their parents knew him. You say, my mom voted for you. And she asked me to say also that she expects you to do better for CSU next time around, right? So it's just not going in there and yelling and screaming that CSU matters, but putting a sophisticated infrastructure into this advocacy effort that targets individual elected representatives with stories that they're going to resonate to, AKA from their district, and they want to get reelected. And this is the powerful thing, where administration and faculty leadership and student leadership and communities can all say, you know, there's 30 things we ought to be doing, but here are the 5 that are at the core that we can agree on. And so we walk in there, and I talked about not wanting to raise tuition because I'm concerned about blocking out a segment of society. And students go in there and say, I don't want to raise tuition because, you know, I've spent enough for this public, you know. Everybody delivers. Faculty walk in and say, let's not raise tuition, but we need more resources in order to have an enriched learning environment on our campus. And these are the things that aren't happening today in terms of academic support. And you turkeys, you know, we need you to realize that this is an investment. For every dollar we put in, there's $5.65 return to California's economy. And our students, when they graduate from here, they're going to spend more in taxes paying you back than the person who goes to a prison. It costs 5 times as much as a college education and will never pay taxes, right? And then a community member says the same thing in different words. That's strategic advocacy. But the student voice, particularly if they say, you know, I'm a young parent and I've got a 9-year-old, so I'm standing up for Logan, right? So when he goes to college at 18 or 20 or whatever it's going to be, 25 the way he's going sometimes, but you know, it becomes very personal. And I think the good people in Sacramento get hammered from so many sides, but when it's personalized and it's respectful, but it's clear, that's how we move the political needle. Now, we don't have the same level of advocacy capacity than some other people who are up the same trough making the case. And the K-12 system has a lot of yellow school buses we don't. Right? So the larger organizations have more voices, more dollars donated, etc. Can't be naive about the fact that it just came down to absolute numbers of faces, that even though we're big, we're small in a state of almost 40 million people. But what we can do is take the value message about improved communities, fewer reliances on criminal justice system if you get a college degree, fewer uses of social service systems if you get a college. The intellectual discussion, as well as the passion particularly brought by our students of opportunity for them and their brothers and sisters and ultimately their own family if they choose to have it. Advocacy matters. The student voice is the most powerful and also the most fun. Thank you.
Chancellors, thank you for investing your time today with us, and thank everyone for coming, and appreciate your being here and appreciate your questions. Thank you all very much.